This is it. This is the cheapest bolt-action hunting rifle you can get anywhere on the market. Believe me, we looked. This is the Stevens 334, and it's got wrap. There's no way I could get that off normally. Did it. So the way we're going to look at this, though, is not by its cover, but what can it actually accomplish? Can it actually be a good hunting rifle? So Garrett, that you guys may not really know. You've seen him in a few videos, but Garrett's our videographer at Backfire, and we're getting him hooked, folks, into guns. And so he is considering taking this gun on a bear hunt. We've set up 3 different tests that this gun has to pass in order to be hunt worthy. Number 1, has to pass the feeding gauntlet. It's got to feed and eject without any problems. If a gun doesn't feed, it doesn't hunt. That's our rule at Backfire. Had too many problems where a hunt was ruined due to feeding of a rifle. Number 2, we're going to put it through an accuracy test. To feel confident with it, we're going to shoot 3 groups of 3 shots, and 2 of the 3 have to be 1 MOA or smaller. If it's any bigger than that, it's not like we can't successfully go hunting, especially if you're keeping your shots short. And Garrett's a new hunter. Shots are going to be very short. But you just don't have that confidence if a gun isn't shooting really, really well. So that's number 2. And number 3, we're going to pick 3 targets out to 500 yards. Not that he'll be hunting that far, but just for practice at unknown distances, and we can see if he can hit all of them in a row. And since this is the Stevens 334, Garrett, you got 3 hours and 34 minutes to get it scoped up and get it ready. Think you can do it?
I got it.
Let's go. I'm cameraman today. Garrett's sighting this thing in. You'll notice it's, we've changed clothes here because we ran into problems. Anyway, we paused our time. Now we're ready to continue on the clock. Got to get this thing sighted in, see what kind of accuracy it can do on such a cheap gun. Ready?
Let's do it.
All right, my turn. The action, it fed the ammo in there. Oh, it's a 2-stage trigger. So you feel the take up, and then you get to a wall. That's nice. Okay, that was the worst trigger I have ever felt on a factory rifle. That was crazy. All right, let me just load blank here. So I'll pull with my left. There's take up, so it's like a 2-stage, but then there's creep, 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 more creep, more creep, more creep, and then it goes off. Whoa! That's a qualified 7-inch group right there.
You're joking.
All right, new ammo. Okay, well, first group with American whitetail went about 6 inches for a 3-shot group. It's not promising. So now we're switching to Winchester ammo. See how we do with this one. Okay, that's probably a 2.5-inch group, something like that. Much better. All right, next ammo. Oh, right near the other one. Okay. Well, Garrett, thus far, we aren't even approaching a 1 MOA group yet.
Nope.
Now we're trying this true velocity stuff. This is that plastic cased ammo that kind of hit the market last year or so. I saw it on shelves and I just haven't seen it at all since then. I just don't really get the benefit of it. Top left of the circle. It's funny that the first shot has hit the top left each time. Oh, that was good. He's right next to it. Maybe an inch.
Yes.
Maybe an inch. Okay, our goal was to get back-to-back groups of an inch or less with this cheap gun. And so I say shoot 3 more with that true velocity and see if we can do it. It might pass the test in the end.
All right.
What do you think?
I think so. I think so.
It's rough, but hey, it might work. Okay.
All right, here we go.
Ken the Stevens 334, do it. Come on, baby. Shoot your little heart out. Let's get this thing done. Come on, Stevens. Okay, that was pretty close. Come on, let's do this. Let's go, get it. Yes, yes, we might do this. Yes, let's go. Come on, one more shot, Garrett. Oh, no good. Hit way low. There's a rock behind the box and it must have hit that. Oh, we'll go measure, but I don't think we did it. All right. First group was a porky 5 inches. 1.9. 2.9. Was this an inch? Ah, 1.2. And then 1.8. So we shot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups, not a single one under 1 MOA. Accuracy, unfortunately, it failed the field test. Now, if you were to get this gun, you're going to go sit up in a tree stand and you just, hey, all you got the budget for is the cheapest gun on the market. Absolutely, you're going to whack yourself a whitetail. If you're, taking a shot at 100 yards, it's going to be okay as long as you have the right ammo. Some of them, a 5-inch group, I wouldn't be comfortable even at 100 yards. But, most of these, sure, you're going to be fine at shorter range. But, it just doesn't compete at all with, say a Ruger American. It's just barely more expensive than this and shoots like a house on fire. I mean, we're producing 1/2-inch groups from the Ruger American. So, fails this test. We failed test number 1. Couldn't get back-to-back groups at 1 inch. We came kind of close, though. This test number 2. We got targets at 300, 500, and 600 yards. See if we can make some impacts here, just to see what it can do, long range. And then test number 3 is going to be the feeding gauntlet, because a gun that can't feed doesn't go hunting. Impact! All right. Okay. So now we got to hit at 3. You got 2 shots left. You got to hit 500 and 600.
Let's do it.
Hey, impact!
Yes!
Dead center.
Let's go.
With the cheapest gun on the market, 500 yards. This is nuts.
I'm a miracle worker, Jim.
I mean, not to be prideful or anything, but I am a miracle.
I'm a humble guy, but
But when you're hitting 500, come on.
Gotta toot my own horn,
All right, feeding. First, an analogy so that this even makes sense. When I was in high school, I drove a 1976 Chevy Silverado. It was old school even back then. It was beautiful because I'd have sunflower seeds, and it was just a tradition in my truck. You'd spit them in the interior cab. So we'd have just spit all over the inside of the dashboard and stuff. Had 3 gas tanks back there. I loved that truck. All my friends, when they'd go through the high school parking lot, I'd tell them to key my truck because it didn't have any paint on it anyway. It's just going to rust. I loved that truck. I would give anything to have a 76 Chevy Silverado. The Stevens 334 is a Chevy Silverado. Like, it does feed every time. Coming from the magazine, I'd call it more reliable than most guns at feeding. But it's like if you were in a race, like a car race, with my 1976 Chevy Silverado. Like, yeah, my truck is probably going to finish the race, but it's not going to do it in style. When you're walking through SHOT Show at all the booths, we always laugh as we go through the booths because not all of them, but most of the bolt action rifles, they have just oiled the crap out of those actions. Like they're just dripping in oil so that it'll feel smooth as people come by and try it. So we have SHOT Showed up this action, and hey, look at that. That's pretty good. But that is SHOT Showed up with a ton of oil. When it's and if you had that much oil on it, any little speck of dust is going to get stuck on there, and it creates more problems. When we did get any little bit of dust in there, it was rough, and when it's not really slicked up, it's very tough. So yes, it's going to feed and extract actually really well, but that action is rough. So before we get too deep on this thing, let's just talk about what the Stevens 334 even is. So Stevens is owned by Savage now, and they're imported firearms from Turkey. I don't know if I have really seen any imported firearm from Turkey that's just a real solid quality firearm. Let me know in the comments if that's an overgeneralization and there are some exceptions. But in general, Turkish firearms are usually the very lowest end of the market. They're just making things cheap. And that's good, because that's what we want. That's what this gun's all about. So the odd thing to me is this is a direct competitor to the Savage Axis. Savage Axis is, $30, $50 more maybe, but it's playing right in that same price point for kind of a similar build quality of a firearm. And so I don't totally understand what they're going for. But let's talk about that build quality. So one thing that I really like is even on the cheapest gun on the market, it comes with a Picatinny rail. That's awesome. That's going to save everybody $50, $75 on their gun if it has a Picatinny rail. So that makes the gun really even cheaper. One that really hurts is it doesn't have a threaded muzzle at all, so you can't use a muzzle brake or a suppressor on this gun. The bluing on the steel is something that I like to watch pretty carefully on cheap guns, like the Savage Axis is, that I've seen a lot of just kind of light rust build up on that barrel. Even just in like a light rain one day hunting, you wake up the next morning while you're hunting and, tried to take care of it the best you could, but it's just wet hunting and it's already all pitted up. So that's one that I'm curious to see how this holds up over time. You'll see a plastic trigger guard, which of course nobody's excited about, but I don't know that I've ever broken my trigger either, or the trigger guard. The stock is more stiff than maybe you would expect. It really holds up quite a bit better than a lot of other plastic stocks. However, the barrel channel is way too tiny. See how close that barrel is to the stock? Now that makes it look like a little bit, finer of a finish to not have a giant gap in there, but it creates a huge problem. Watch how little pressure it takes for the barrel to contact the stock. Hit. Can you hear that? I'll put my mic closer. Barely any effort, and that's contacting. That's something that's hard to see in an accuracy test where we're using a sandbag that's spreading the pressure wide over the forend of the stock. But if you were to use a bipod, man, it would be very easy to be pushing one time and the barrel's contacting the stock and the next time it's not. It is free floated, but barely, and it's not a very tight forend. And so I wish they had a big generous cut out there like the Ruger Americans do, just so that there's less likelihood of that happening. What's the conclusion on the Stevens 334? Look, if this is all the budget you have and you get the right ammo for this gun, it can be fine for a short range weapon. It's going to work okay to whack a deer at 100 yards. It's going to be fine. If you want your gun to do anything more than that at all, if you saved up a tiny bit more, you could have a gun that you might be happy with your whole life. You know, even if this is just all you can get right now, a used one could be an option, something like that may serve you a little bit better. But basically, can this gun shoot under 2 MOA with the right ammo? Yes. Can it hit a target at 300 and 500 yards? Yes. But it's going to be your very basic firearm. Overall, the Stevens 334 has a lot of problems. The action is very rough. The trigger is terrible. Garrett, how does it feel to shoot that trigger?
It's terrible.
What's terrible? I agree. That's the worst that's the worst trigger I've felt.
Yeah, I just feel like you're pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling, and then it's like, oh, it's gonna shoot, and then you're pulling and pulling, and then it shoots.
Yeah, it's like opening an old creaky door on a horror movie, like.
Yeah, it's terrible. But the worst part is the action. I just can't.
Yeah, so we got some dirt in the action, and it was rough. I mean, very rough, like out of the box. Yeah. Very rough action. We got some dirt in there for doing the thumbnail picture. Even after cleaning it out, it's still just rough with a tiny bit of dirt in there. That action's not fun to work with.
No.
It has a very rock solid butt pad that isn't going to do hardly anything for you, but it is a gun and it can function. And so that's the Stevens 334. Coming up on Backfire, we're going to do our rundown of the best under $700, and we'll see how all those stack up.
Do you think if you tried hard enough, you could get this gun to shoot really good?
Nope.